So, one thing about me, I was actually kind of old when I finally got my driver's license. I was 21, which I was still young, obviously, but relatively old compared to a lot of other people that get their license when they're 16, 18. Thing is, I grew up in New York City where having a car, having a license didn't really. There was really no purpose in having one because driving in New York City was a fucking nightmare. So there's really no reason to even like put yourself through that. Like if I lived in New York City, if I was crazy enough to move back there and spend the ridiculous amount of money that I would need to live there, and I had a car, I would probably never use my car like ever because the parking is horrible, the driving is horrible. As terrible as the transit is and the MTA, I would still rather deal with that than actually driving because I've had to do it a couple of times since I got my license coming back to visit. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. So that's really the main reason why I didn't get it sooner. I was at a point where I moved to a very rural area, so getting a license and having a car became a necessity rather than a privilege or a luxury. Like I needed a car and I needed to be able to drive and get from point A to point B in order to function as an adult and as a member of society. It was my junior year of college when I finally got started because that's when I actually moved to. I moved away from New York City and I went to school. I continued my college education, transferred to a different school that was near where I live currently, and yeah, there's no way I was able to get there without a car. Like to actually walk there from where I live would probably be like a 9 hour walk one way would be 9 hours, so it had to be done. I had to do it. I struggled at first with getting my license and learning how to drive. I found it a very difficult process. It was something that at first it took me a while to really understand how to drive. Like now looking back, I'm like driving is so easy and simple. I don't know why I struggled with it so much, but I was very nervous too. I was afraid of actually getting into an accident. I actually almost did get into an accident the first day I got my learner's permit and I was in the car with my mom and my dad and I almost like literally ran the car off a hill and almost killed us all. So yeah, so I was kind of afraid of getting of crashing the car, especially since the car didn't belong to me. It was my parents' car. When I finally got my own car, I'm like, bro, if I fuck this up, I'm gonna be screwed financially and just overall. Like I need a car, so I would always be very cautious and always careful. When I'm even still to this day, I've been licensed for over 5 years now, and I'm still just like a little bit of a nervous driver. When I'm driving somewhere I'm familiar with and I know the area, I've been, it's like part of my daily commute or whatever, I never feel nervous on the road. But if I'm like driving, like when I did the road trip to Philadelphia a few months ago to go to WrestleMania, I was a little shaky during the whole trip because I'm driving like somewhere I'd never been before, driving in a city. I was really nervous about that, but Philadelphia is actually a pretty easy city to drive in. I just assume because New York City is horrible that every city is, but it really isn't. Taking the road test though was a challenge. So my father was teaching me how to drive, but he got himself into trouble with the law, so he couldn't really teach me how to drive because his license was suspended. And my mother was really like, it's where I get the nervousness from. My mom was really, really like shaking every time I was in the car, and she was like, that definitely didn't help because she was always like nervous and like afraid of something, like something bad was gonna happen. So I didn't. So I had to take driving lessons from this old guy that was really weird. like he just like would teach me a whole bunch of weird ways how to drive that didn't actually make any sense. Like he taught you to always ride the white line on the road. I'm like, what the fuck? Like at first I didn't question it because I didn't know how to actually drive. So I'm like, okay, but yeah, that's how he taught me how to drive. Always ride the white line. Do all these weird different things like with driving that you're actually not supposed to do. But he was the only driving instructor like in the area that I could get. So I put up with him, and then I think my mom wanted to see what she was paying for because she was paying for my driving lessons and for me to get the license. So she did a ride along, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you can't be with this guy anymore." And then my dad ended up right around that time got his license restored. So he was my driving instructor for the next like month or two. It was like August of 2018 when I got my learner's permit, and then it was like January, February of 2019 when I actually got my license. Taking the road test was a whole fun thing. I definitely became a much better driver though with my father because my father was actually he was a very great like he was very great at teaching things, and he was always calm, so I didn't like feel nervous. Because my mom was really nervous. He was just calm. Even when I accidentally ran a red light one time and it was like driving really fast, he was just like, whatever. Like he really didn't give a shit. Like he was the type of person, if someone put a gun to his head, he would just be like, eh. Like he really was someone else. But the road test, I actually should have failed. Never mind, almost failed. I should have failed. But to be fair, it wasn't all my fault. So the road test happened on a day when there was like really bad snow and really bad weather. So they took points actually against my performance and against me on the test because I was driving too slow. So it was like a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit in the town where the test was taken, but I was going like 23 or 22 or something like that because I was fucking like I was slipping and sliding a little bit on that road. Like it was slushy and it wasn't good. So they actually took points away from me for that. And what really I should have failed on was the parallel parking. That is something that I have always been horrible at. I'm good at everything else when it comes to driving. Parallel parking is like the bane of my existence. I am horrible at it. And also, it doesn't help that I live in an area where I can't do it. Like, there's no need to parallel park in a rural area, so I didn't really have enough practice. But I actually did, like, go into, like, a city and practice, like, actually parallel parking, like, in front, like, between two cars on Main Street, and it worked. Like, I was actually able to do it after a while. It actually worked out. It helped that my car has like a little guidance system like on the rear view camera that tells you exactly, like, based off of where your wheels are turned, where you're going to end up, like where the car is going to be positioned. So that helped a lot. Having that assistance for the car, having that built-in feature kind of helped me cheat a little bit. But I still failed though I didn't fail the road test, but I failed the parallel parking portion. Like practicing, I was able to finally get down to it because it's all about exposure, right? Because like I said, I was never really exposed to parallel parking, so that was the toughest thing. But then on the parallel parking, they told me to parallel park between one car, like behind one car. And that just threw me off so much because I always based it off where both cars are positioned. So when they said, like, yeah, there's one car, parallel park behind the one car, I guess that was really to reduce risk of an accident. That's why they do it that way on the road test. But practically speaking, it's like it completely threw me off because I'm like parallel parking with one car. Like my brain is telling me to just park the car, and he gave me like 3 different tries to redo it, and I fucked it up all the times. And then it was time to like for the test to be over, and he was like the road test instructor was like, I don't know what to do with you. I want to pass you, but I'm also afraid that you're gonna like kill someone on the road. He actually said that, or you're gonna get into like a really bad accident. And I was just like, please pass me. And he passed me, but I should have failed, and I would have ended up taking it again. I eventually would have passed, but yeah, I passed on my first try. I know there are a lot of people who failed on their first try, so I guess that's cool. Even though, really, by the books, he should have failed me, definitely. To this day, I don't really parallel park. I think one time I had to go to New York City, and I knew parallel parking was like a thing. Like visiting New York City, I knew I had to do it at some point. So I just went on a YouTube video, looked up how to parallel park, and I was able to actually replicate that on the from the video. But it was like based off of like the right side of the road, and I had to parallel park on the left side. So in my brain, I just reversed the instructions that the video gave me, and I was like, I pulled it off. I did it. I fucking did it. So yeah, it's I mean, I've never been to an accident ever since then. I've never had any accident on the road ever. I've never had any issues. I've had close calls, but I would say 99% of the time it has not been my fault. It's like stupid people on the road. I mean, anyone who's driven before knows what I'm talking about. But yeah, it's definitely, if you feel like you have a lot more freedom because you could pretty much go in it wherever you want, whenever you want, just drive. Just if I want to right now, I could just get in the car and go on a drive and go wherever. So there is a lot of liberation and freedom in that. It makes you really feel like you're an adult, like you're actually a functioning member of society. And even every now and then, I'm just like on the road driving, and I'm like, I know how to drive. I have a license. Like I still think 5 years later, that's still so cool. But it's a great thing. Driving is great. You just have to get used to it. And really, the worst part about having to drive is having to get a car. And a lot of the time you have to get like financing and that kind of thing, which is horrible. And that's like the car payments have been through the roof too. So I'm afraid because my car's got like It's going on 120,000 miles, which I know doesn't necessarily signify that it's about to die, because there are cars that can go more than 200. And I do have a really good car, Jeep Renegade, which at least is known for its reliability, like long term. So, I just hope that doesn't happen anytime soon, because that's like the one thing, like having a car payment on top of my already existing expenses would significantly impact my finances in a very negative way. So, yeah, it sucks. Getting a car and having access to one is a very, very, very expensive thing. It's like when you get a mortgage, it's whatever, because the chances are more likely than not it's going to appreciate in value over time. But as soon as that car leaves the lot, it depreciates, so you can't even really sell it and get anything out of it. And you have like these insane interest rates on these car payments. That's really the only bad thing I could say though about driving. Otherwise, driving is great. I'm glad that I learned how to. Just the experience of feeling that grabbing that steering wheel and feeling like I'm just in control of this vehicle. It's still such a cool thing, and I'm still gonna think it's a cool thing when I'm like 56, not 26. Yeah, I love driving, and I should have failed the road test, but I haven't got in an accident since. So, road instructor, you made the right decision.